Next up, one of the most fascinating stories. I say that because, and I'm going to ask him to share it with you. He went from small town Nebraska to national play-by-play broadcast on Westwood One. The voice of Sunday Night Football, the NCAA tournament on Westwood One, Big Ten Network, accomplished and humble. Kevin Kugler, I appreciate you being here. Thank you so very much.
Hi, John, and everybody else. This is amazingly cool. I know everybody watched The Last Dance. I'm sort of like the 98-99 Bulls coming in here. After all of these great legends, now here come the 98-99 Bulls with Tim Floyd coaching. So I'm just excited to be here. This has been an amazing day. I wish I'd had a resource like this when I was starting out to learn from some of the people that I've been listening to on and off today. It's amazing.
Kevin, I appreciate your humility. From the moment I emailed you to invite you, you've been humble about your inclusion, but you are very much here for a reason. So again, thank you for that. If you would, share the story, because everybody starts in a small market with the aspiration to get where you did. How did that unfold?
Yeah, it was, my path's a little different than a lot of people that you've been able to hear today. I graduated from the University of Nebraska, grew up in Lincoln, spent the beginning of my life in a small town in Colorado, and then we moved to Lincoln. I spent 7 months without a job out of college, trying to find anything. Small market first. Went after I was in York, Nebraska for a year. I went to the CBA. I was a play-by-play announcer, a PR director, whatever you needed me to be kind of guy. That league folded. I bounced around doing a variety of things for a few years. Almost got out of the business because it wasn't working for me. And I had gotten married, trying to figure out how I was going to make a living with this hobby of mine. And got a chance right before I was going to quit this business to Division II football and basketball. And that was enough to keep me in. Then I ended up hosting, got a chance through my affiliation with the local radio station in Omaha, Nebraska, to have the opportunity to move on to do national broadcasting through Westwood One. Started with the College World Series. I did sideline reporting on the College World Series. That was my first Westwood One. And then I got the opportunity a few years later to move into the Westwood One realm, moved into the television realm in 2012, BTN, and now broadened a little bit thanks to BTN and Fox being in the same family. I've gotten the chance to do some NFL games and Major League Baseball games on Fox, and now here I am, growing a beard during a pandemic.
Good. Way to use your time wisely and productive.
Yeah.
Good job. Let's start the questioning for Kevin with Dom Savino. Dom, thanks for hanging in. Please state your affiliation and your question.
Yeah, thanks, John, for taking my question. And thanks, Kevin, for joining us. I'm a sports broadcaster from northern New Jersey. I actually work for Rutgers, so I'm very familiar with your work on BTN because I do a lot of work on BTN+. My question is about the story you just told about your start. I'm in my second year out of college. I've had a lot of great experiences, like working at Rutgers since I graduated, but everybody wants to move up now, right? You don't want to wait. Right. You want to move up to a national network now. What was your mindset like during some of those tough times where things weren't happening the way you wanted them to? And like you said, you were pretty close to getting out of the business entirely.
You have to have a passion for this business because it has to sustain you through the lean years, through the years where you're making, I think my first paycheck was $1,100 a month. I remember riding my bike to work. It wasn't exactly, I wasn't exactly raking it in, but you have to have for this business to sustain you through those moments. And I was passionate about wanting to be involved in this. I started in college, I was going to be a sports agent, but I just couldn't deal with the fact that everybody was wearing a suit and carrying a briefcase. And so I switched into broadcasting and have been obviously very thrilled with that path, but a path that was not as smooth as I anticipated it would be. And your mindset goes up and down. You have good days, you have bad days. You have days where you think maybe this is going to be the thing that kickstarts you to the next level. And you have days where you're wondering if you're ever going to get that opportunity and how you're going to be happy if you don't get that opportunity. I freely admit the path that I took is not an easy path. And I was very fortunate along the way to meet people and to get opportunities to be able to get to where I am right now. But it's just one of those things where my major male influence in my life was my grandfather. And he always used to tell me that I should live by the 3 Ps: patience, persistence, and perseverance. And that was really what I leaned on in those years, that you just have to persevere through some of those moments and just keep kicking down doors. You keep waiting for opportunities. You never say no to any opportunity that comes along, even if it seems like it's something you don't want to do, because you never know who you're going to meet that can lead you to another opportunity that maybe suits you a little bit better down the road.
And right on with that. Don, thank you for your question. Let's go to Luke's iPhone. Luke, thank you, my brother. What's your affiliation and question for Kevin?
Yeah, I'm a junior at Ithaca College, and I just wanted to ask about kind of your sports radio talk, I guess, background. Not a lot of that has been talked about today. So I saw you had a talk show on KOZN, and as someone who hasn't had a lot of opportunities in play-by-play and done a lot of sports talk radio myself, do those two kind of go with each other? Are they separate within the industry, or?
Here's what I will tell you, Luke, and anybody else really. That helped me a ton doing play-by-play, because think about this for a minute. What are you doing play-by-play? Well, part of your play-by-play work is you are ad-libbing for 3 hours. You've got a structure to it, and there's something that you're talking about that you're watching in front of you. But you are not scripting this out. This is not me sitting at a desk reporting on sports for 3 minutes a night. This is me having to be ad-lib essentially for 3 hours about something that's happening in front of me. Sports talk really helped me do that. Yes, there's a structure to what you do in sports talk. We did 4 hours a day. I did it for 12 years. And I did it in a market that doesn't have professional sports. So it's not like I could lean on the Yankees and Mets. I couldn't lean on the Phillies. I couldn't lean on any of that stuff. It was Nebraska football. And when you didn't talk about Nebraska football, people would call in not to talk about other stuff, but to ask you why you're not talking about Nebraska football. So it was something that you had to learn how to create conversation in a time where there wasn't anything that was creating that conversation. I firmly believe that if you have a knack for play-by-play, and I believe it's a different skill set to a certain degree, but I really think that your ability to ad-lib on sports can benefit you as a play-by-play person if you also have some of the skill set to do play-by-play.
Quinn Douglas, you are under center. So state your affiliation, please, and launch your question.
Thanks, John. Nice to see you again. Kevin, I don't know if you remember, we ran into each other at the Iowa-Wisconsin basketball game back in June.
I know who you are, Quinn. Good to see you.
Nice to see you again. I've worked for KRUI Radio, which you probably, I don't know if you remember that or not, but working for them for the last couple of years. What I wanted to ask you, you've been around a lot with how much you do, obviously doing Westwood One, doing BTN, and doing a lot of other things. You seem like kind of a Renaissance guy. What's been the biggest learning experience about your broadcasting career? What if there's a single event that was a huge learning experience, what would that be?
That's a good question. And me being a Renaissance guy would be the first time that anyone has ever accused me of having any sort of Renaissance anything in my life. But as far as I learn from everything I do. If you don't, it's very hard to progress in your craft. I mean, to me, this is no different than anybody else who is passionate about their craft. I work with Matt Millen on Saturdays. Matt is a passionate woodworker, probably something not a lot of people know about Matt Millen. And he goes to seminars and he learns from other people who do it because he wants to be good at his craft. Well, there's not one moment that I would say, oh my gosh, that's the moment that I figured out, how to do this. I will tell you this story of my very first game on Westwood One, about a decade, 2006. So I guess it's 14 years now. I'm bad at math. And I'm doing my first game for Westwood One. The years prior, I'd been doing radio games for Division II football for the University of Nebraska Omaha, which is no longer fielding a football team. My very first game was Pitt, Virginia, 2006, Heinz Field in Pittsburgh. My stats guy, the network provides a stats person and a spotter for Westwood One based on the location. So my very first game, my stats guy gets up after the very first series, leaves to go to the bathroom, and never returns. So I have no stats guy. He's gone. This is my very first game. So I'm plodding along with no stats guy. I'm not sure what I'm doing. I'm working with Terry Bowden, who I've just met for the first time the night before. Second half comes along. We go to break. Wait a minute. Hold on. We're in break. We can't come back. The television break gets waved off. So we're gone. It's my first game. I'm just trying to not step on a variety of things here, including my own tongue. And my producer gets in my headset standing behind me and he goes, okay, we're not going to be back from break yet. And I'm watching. Tyler Palko breaks the hug, walks up to the line. Tyler Palko to snap. We're not back yet. Tyler Palko drops to throw. I look on the field, and it's a play-by-play person's horror. There's a wide receiver running 20 yards behind every defender on the field. And in my headset, I'm hearing, click it to save lives, seatbelts, save lives. And I'm thinking, my producer gets in and he says, recreate it. This is my first game on a national level as a play-by-play guy. We get back from break. The ball is on the arc down into the receiver's hands. It is the fastest 77-yard touchdown pass in the history of college football. Palko back to throw, and touchdown. I mean, but I got done with that, and that was a moment where I was like, okay, because everybody was like, oh my gosh, you pulled that off. You didn't panic. That was the moment where I thought, okay, maybe I can pull this off, because I lose my stat guy the first series. He disappears, and I'm thinking, I'm so bad this dude evacuated the booth like it was on fire. And then I have to recreate a massive touchdown pass in the span of 4 seconds coming out of a break. I don't know that there are a lot of moments where you say, oh, that's a game changer, but at least that was a moment where I felt like, okay, I got a shot to at least stay in this business for 5 or 6 more minutes.
Kevin, in the last 10 minutes, we've added math and storytelling to your Renaissance man skill set. Great storyteller. Matt Digby, thanks for hanging in, buddy. Your affiliation and question for Kevin.
Yeah, thank you, John. Great to speak with you, Kevin. My name is Matt Digby. I'm the sports director at WOAY-TV in Oak Hill and Beckley, West Virginia. And my question is pertaining to the topic of this business is all about relationships. And I was just wondering, what's your take on the significance, Kevin, of relationships and keeping in touch specifically with former supervisors and former employers, regardless of the terms on how they became former supervisors?
Yeah, I mean, I think, look, Matt, if you were ushered out the door with someone holding a box in hand and never to come back and darken their doorstep, I'm probably not going to call that guy and ask him for a reference. But you have to be able to communicate with everybody you've come across that you leave on decent terms with. To me, this is it's a weird thing about this business that has always made me scratch my head. We are a communications business, and yet we communicate terribly at times in this business, whether it be communicate on air or off air, communicate with each other, communicate on a broadcast. For whatever reason, as a group of communicators, we don't do a very good job of communicating. And so I think that's one of the steps in this business that anybody can take. It doesn't cost you anything to shoot a text, to shoot an email. Especially during this time, I've been making it a point to send 2 or 3 texts, 2 or 3 notes, 2 or 3 phone calls a day to people, just to kind of touch base with them. I'm not looking for anything, but it's just one of those ways that you can kind of keep yourself in the mix, keep yourself in the conversation, and continue to strengthen those connections. It's really important in this business. It doesn't guarantee anything, but it certainly doesn't hurt anything either.
Yep. A lot more important who you know than what you know sometimes. Mason Stalf, you're up. What's your question for Kevin?
Hi, Kevin. Thanks to everyone here. Kevin, just one of the questions that I was kind of curious about working, I live outside of Los Angeles, work for D2 Cal Poly Pomona, originally by way of Elon University in North Carolina, so small market area as well. But the question I wanted to ask you is, a lot of my viewership and potentially all of my viewership is family members and friends and potential recruits who are looking to come to either of the schools that I'm calling for. What would you say the best way is to be constructively critical when you're calling for a home team, and also complimentary but not over the top complimentary, since you are calling for the home team, of the away team?
That's always a question that you have to wrestle with, especially when I've called for teams before, and you hear it if you are over the top critical one way or the other. There are ways to couch it. You run into that sometimes as well. You work for a conference network, because you're not going to bury a bunch of people during a Big Ten game. Not that there's ever been an edict about that, but you just know kind of who your audience is and where your audience is. So the thing you have to do is try to couch that in a way that doesn't sound like you're being critical. And I know that's kind of an odd answer, but to me, if you say, instead of saying, you know, oh my gosh, what a terrible play by that left tackle. I mean, you know, my gosh, what's he looking at? Or, you know, the left tackle was just awful there. You talk about maybe try to work in something, well, one step more to his left and he'd had a chance to make a, you know, a better set on that block, whatever you want to say. If you can twist it around a little bit to, you know, this is a more, you're couching it in a more positive way. It's a fine line that you can tell. I struggle with this as well. It's a fine line to walk. How do you know to have your own credibility as an announcer? You're not just going to sit there and go, gosh, everything is great. It's 85-0, but we're really playing hard in this game. You can't do that. So you have to be honest, but you have to couch that honesty in a way to keep your job, which is, you know, you're just not blasting that kid. You know, maybe you say something along the lines of, oh, you'd really love to see, you know, one extra step there, or one extra this, or you'd love to see this happen. And well, I know that's one thing the coach is going to be really working hard on in the next week, is they really want to get that shored up so that doesn't continue to be a problem in the weeks and months ahead. It's just trying to figure out creative ways to work and word how you want to be critical without actually killing the person or persons on the field.
Dane Richardson, welcome. What's your affiliation and your question for Mr. Kevin Kugler?
First off, thanks, Kevin and John, for doing this. I'm a freshman student at Ithaca College, and I've done things with Ithaca College Television, and I'll be the play-by-play guy for the Syracuse Sulcats in the New York Collegiate Baseball League this summer.
Good.
My question for you, Kevin, is when you're dealing with a blowout game, whether it's in football or basketball, how do you sort of approach the broadcast to keep the viewer entertained? Because it's not a close game, so why are they going to watch?
That is where your preparation comes. Those games are taken care of on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday when you're prepping for the game. My preparation doesn't show up as much in a tight ball game because the game tells the story itself there. And last year I saw this on the chat, a couple of people mentioned that we were Illinois football's favorite broadcast team because it seemed like we had every Illinois game last year on BTN, because we did. And Illinois had a knack for playing tight game after tight game after tight game. And so the game would tell the story. You didn't really need to delve too deep into the book of preparation that you do. But when it's a bad game, when it's a game that is lopsided, when it's a game, that's where your rapport with your analyst, that's where your storytelling ability comes in. That's where your preparation really shows up. Anybody on this call and anybody in this business can come up with a good highlight or a good play or a good game when the game itself is super compelling. But the better broadcasters in the world, the Ian Eagles, the Kevin Harlans, guys you've heard, Jim Nance, guys you've heard from all day long here, those guys can make a bad game at least interesting enough to keep you around. And that's the challenge that each one of us has. When we go into a bad game, and there's sometimes you go into a game like a non-conference game in the college football season. Middle Tennessee and Michigan's not going to be a great football game. You know it going in. So you think about, okay, what are things we can do? And these are conversations you have before the game too. What is it we can do when this game gets out of hand to keep people interested in watching it? What's going to hook that person to stay in. That's Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday stuff. That's how you prepare for those things. It doesn't happen on the fly. You go into it with a book of preparation and you say, all right, if I need this, great. If the game is great, I'm not necessarily going to need it, but you may not be the best. This is always my mantra. I may not be the best. I may not have the perfect broadcast, but it's not going to be because of a lack of preparation. I will prepare for every single thing to the nth degree. And if it doesn't need to come out on the air, all the better, because that usually means something compelling has happened on the field.
John Wooden preached, failure to prepare is preparing to fail. One guy who never fails is Ryan Zimmerman. Ryan, step up to the mic. That was cheesy, I know.
That's a broadcaster segue right there, John.
Yeah,
It was.
thanks, John.
Yeah, go ahead.
By the way, if I had $1 for every time someone made a joke about my name, I could probably pay Ryan Zimmerman's salary. But obviously, my name's Ryan Zimmerman. I'm a senior at the University of California, Berkeley, where I do play-by-play for the student/university radio station there. And God willing, this summer I'll be broadcasting play-by-play for the Katuitt Kettleers of the Cape Cod Baseball League. My question is, obviously, when you're starting out, getting your first play-by-play job, you're hired more by a team than you are by a network, and you have to keep that in mind. And how exactly do you balance having to have that home slant towards your employer while still maintaining professionalism and still keeping a good broadcast while you're on air?
I think it's as simple as relationships that you have with the people that have hired you, first off, because you need to know they're going to have your back. So if you are a team, you make sure you have good relationships and that you exhibit yourself in a good way to those people, because they're the ones who are going to have your back if somebody's going to complain. And I was told very early in this business by a veteran broadcaster who said, anytime you turn on your microphone and say something other than time or somebody what you're saying. And I've found that to be true regardless of what I'm doing, whether talk, play-by-play, whatever. Somebody's always annoyed by something you're saying. So you're able to miss that. Have those relationships with the people that hired you, the people that work for that team, the people that are in charge of that team, and be honest. And I think you have a little more leeway if you're doing professional sports versus college sports. Professional sports expects a little bit more bluntness. I am more willing to be critical, if I ever am, of a professional athlete than I am a college athlete from the standpoint of they screwed up. College guy, not necessarily going to call him out as much. Professional guy, you call him out a little bit more. But I think the whole point, just be honest, be forthright, be above board, don't go over the top, have those good relationships with the people that hire you, and I really think you're going to be fine. It's as long as they understand there's going to be criticism too. I've worked for people before that haven't understood that criticism comes with this, and so anytime something would happen, they get a little scared about that. They're a little concerned about it. Just as long as everybody understands what the situation is and you are blunt but not over the top killing people, you should be fine.
Let's go to my old buddy, Casey Bryant. Casey, let's go ahead and state your affiliation and your question for Renaissance Man, Kevin Kugler.
Hey, Kevin, thank you so much for taking my question. And John, thank you very much for putting this all together. Kevin, I'm with the Danbury Hat Tricks hockey team, which is in the Federal Prospects Hockey League. It's a very low level of minor league hockey. And I have great admiration for the 30 for 30 on the Spirits of St. Louis and the gentleman who was on before you, Bob Costas, who worked for them and for the Eastern Hockey League, the low level of hockey. Often when you're working at the lower levels of professional sports, it's a one-man band and you're kind of throwing things all together, making sure the technical side is correct, making sure the tickets are being sold, and then making your way up to the booth. And working out in Nebraska and growing up in the Midwest, I'm sure that you can relate to kind of the lower networks with the smaller markets. You're kind of doing a lot of things at once. I'm wondering what your best DIY experience was as a broadcaster and how that helped you grow in your career.
Well, it was right out of the gate when I was working for the Omaha Racers, a now defunct CBA basketball team. I was, Casey, very similar to what you're doing. I would help sweep the stadium, would a variety of different things. As far as I did the game notes, I did the broadcast. I mean, you know how it is. You do a little bit of everything because that's your job. And what it teaches you is multitasking, and it teaches you how to make sure you're maximizing your opportunity when you get on the air to do these games. It's something that I would recommend to everybody if you can get a situation like that in your life, because it teaches you so much about getting your preparation done correctly, because you have 5 other things that you have to do. But it was a great experience. I danced with the Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders. I did a bunch. I mean, it was a variety of different things. I got yelled at by Eric Musselman because he thought I was reading a scouting report that he left behind in the arena. And I was in there doing one of my 9 jobs trying to get the arena ready for a game. And this crazy individual comes running, screaming at me, "Did you read that? Did you read that?" And I have no idea what he's talking about. And he grabs the scouting report and he shakes it in my face. And I had no idea what it was. I didn't see it there. I'm certainly not paying attention to it. And then you have to move on. You call a professional game after that. I mean, it teaches you so many different things about yourself and about how you want to operate amidst a whole lot of different things going on. I wouldn't trade those experiences, and you shouldn't trade those experiences either. It makes you better. It just makes you better because you learn how to do what you really want to do, your passion of play-by-play, but while you're doing everything else around it to try to make sure you're making enough money to pay the rent that month.
Thank you very much, Kevin. I appreciate it. Hope you and your family are safe.
Thanks, Casey. Appreciate it.
There's a big helicopter flying past my open window, so forgive the noise. It should be dissipating. Let's go next to Ben Shad. Ben, state your affiliation, please, and your question for Kevin, and thank you for being here.
All right. Thank you, John, and thank you, Kevin, also for being here with us. Everybody, my name is Ben Shad. I currently was working for Millersville Athletics. The Marauders, our NCAA D2 program. I was their play-by-play and color commentator for the past 3 years on our live streaming platform. And I've enjoyed great success with them, great time talking, doing pretty much all the sports under the sun here in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. My question to you, Kevin, is I'm a senior who's awaiting graduation through all these online courses. And amidst through the job postings and what is available, I've always kind of had a knack for wanting to go for jobs that are unlisted or go for positions that aren't currently on a listing right now. But I really don't know what's the best way to cold call, especially in the 21st century where almost everybody has reels that come in a video or audio form. Everybody has a website. Everybody can email. You know, what's the best way in today's world to cold call and really reach above, punch above your weight for a job that might not be on the listing right now?
Yeah, and I think you have to balance the notion of I want to punch above without driving the guy who has the ability to hire you nuts because you've called him 57 times and you've dropped him 87 emails and you're messaging him on Facebook and you're flying a helicopter by his house like somebody is doing to John right now. I mean, you have to, the difficulty in this is finding that balance. Where do you find that sweet spot to where you're not bugging this person, but you let them know that you're there and that you're interested in that job? I think the best way to start is having a conversation with them, not a email, you may have to start the whole process with an email, but I think you have a conversation with them. Pick their brain about the industry. Talk to them about the business that you're in. Use an entree that isn't, I want this job. Use the entree as, I want to talk to you about this business. Can you teach me something about this? I don't know whatever this is. Maybe the person who is hiring for this team used to be a SID somewhere, and you'd love to be able to pick his brain about what that business was like. There are so many different paths you can take to begin a relationship. And again, this goes back to the whole notion of communication. Can you figure out a way to communicate with this person that's different than everybody who's just sent them a link to their reel, everybody who's just sent them a tape, everybody who's just sent an email saying, "Dear Dave, I'm really interested in what your job position might be. Please contact me," because they're going to go delete. you need to reach out differently. You need to figure out a way to get a relationship started that doesn't have anything to do with that job, because then, and it may take a while too, then it took me, I made my first contact with Westwood One in 2003. I didn't get hired until 2006. Every year I sent tapes. Every year I sent stuff because they asked me, because I had a relationship, because I would talk to them. And I had no expectation, even in 2006, I was going to get a job. I thought I was going to get an opportunity to fill in for a game or two, and then they gave me a full schedule. So to me, it's a matter of, can you figure out a different way to have this conversation as opposed to just being that one of 100 people who sent a link to your tape.
Yeah, standing out, huge, great advice. Let's go next to Brian Brownfield. Brian, thanks for hanging in, man. You're up. What's your question for Kevin?
And thanks for taking my question, Kevin, and thanks, John, for setting all of this up. You're speaking about SIDs. I'm the director of communications at St. Mary's College in California, Division I for the Gales. I also do broadcasting for them as well for other games. And my question is, as someone who has a lot of other sports that they're responsible for in a department, and you're calling a lot of different sports season to season, can you, I know the answer is yes, but how can you take something you pick up in a basketball call and bring that over into, let's say, a baseball call, or vice versa? How do you take something from one of your football games that you think you did well and apply that into a basketball broadcast?
Well, and I think, Brian, the first step is you have to be willing to critique yourself. And I have a lot of people ask me all the time, oh, could you listen to this? Could you listen to that? And I do that, but don't take my word for what you're doing. You're your best critic. Don't take my word. Don't take some other broadcaster. You know what you like. Every one of us sits down and watches games all the time. And we know what we like in broadcasters and what we don't like. So when you hear that in a football broadcast of yours, how can that translate to your basketball? How can that translate to baseball? Like the way you turned a phrase? Do you like the way you had energy on this call that you didn't have energy at another time? Do you like the way you communicated with your partner in that situation? Those are all things that you learn by listening to what you're doing, and not by asking John or me or anybody else in this business. Those are good resources as well. I'm not saying ignore else, but I'm saying you know your style, or the style you want to develop if you're still finding your voice. Go out of your way to make yourself listen to what you're doing. Because when you hear something you like, write it down. And I'll do this all the time. I'll hear something I like, I'll write it down. I'll hear something I don't like, and I'll write it down. Because I don't want to use that again if I don't like it. Every one of us, every single broadcast I've walked away on, well, I could have done X better. The day I do the perfect broadcast is the day that I will say, I'm done with broadcasting, have a nice day, because it's like the perfect golf game. If I ever break 68 or something, heck, 80, I'll probably sell my clubs in the parking lot after the game. It's the same way with broadcast. If I had the perfect broadcast, like, well, we're done here, I don't need anything else anymore. Listen to yourself, write down what you like, write down what you don't like, and then figure out a way to what you like into those others. It's not as difficult as it sounds when you know what you're looking for. But the key is to know what you're looking for. You listen to yourself, you make yourself better. You know what you like, and you know what sounds good on a broadcast. You know when you listen to somebody and they say something that you don't like, you're like, don't do that. Write it down. Kevin Kugler said this, he's a moron. I never want to say this. Make sure you write that down so you don't make the mistakes I'm making.
Reese Levin, what is your affiliation and question for Kevin?
Hi, Kevin. My name's Reese Levin. I'm a junior at the University of Maryland. And before I ask my question, I wanted to say your Daryl Marcel call at Minnesota had me jumping out of my bed at 11:30 at night. So thank you for that.
I appreciate that.
My question is, so you obviously do multiple sports, and football and basketball and baseball can kind of overlap at some points. How do you prepare yourself for, if you know you have multiple games, or you know that this is going to take a long time, or you only have a certain amount of time to talk to this head coach or this player? How do you prepare yourself for doing that? And then do you handwrite your boards, or do you type them out?
I'll answer the second part first, because I actually have them next to me. So I type up my boards. These are the boards that I did for the last football game of the year, which was the NFC Championship game. That's my typed boards. I don't know if you can, I assume you can see it. And then I write, I have all my bio notes and all that other stuff, stats in there. I handwrite notes all over the place. It's, and I've seen all the boards that have shown up today on this chat. Every single one of them is different. So and you have to find whatever works for you. I don't know how many different times I've changed my basketball boards and football boards over the years. Every off season, I tweak them in some way, shape, or form, make them bigger. I'll probably make them really big by the time I'm, 65 or 70. But right now, they're and then as far as the rest of your question is all about balance. It's all about how do you find that balance between, and this is what you're talking about is November. And who knows what sports is going to look like this year. What you're talking about this year might be November, December, January, February. I don't know. Everything may just all be in 1 month. Who knows? But what you're in a normal year, that's my November. I have 2 football games a week, and I have 2 basketball games at least a week because we have midweek basketball games. And it all comes down to organization. It all comes down to, I'm a list maker, and so I'll just make lists, handwrite them out. Monday, I need to do this, I need to do this. Tuesday, I need to do this. It's just a matter of, it's like chopping, just go out there and you chop and you chop and you chop and you chop, and eventually it gets done. Organize it, save a lot of stuff to read in transit. There's a lot of different ways that you have to do it, but the first part is you just have to be organized and focused and stick with your schedule so that you can make sure you get every single thing done that you have to do.
Last question for Kevin will come from my man, Benjamin Ray. Benjamin, I'm glad you're here, man. Thank you for that. Go ahead and tell everybody your affiliation and pitch your question to Kevin.
John, this has been awesome. Thank you. I'm working broadcasting at the University of North Alabama in Florence, Alabama. Kevin, my question for you is, I know you go back and forth between radio and TV. I just want to know, what's your preparation work like, flip-flopping, and is there things that you carry over from each avenue as you work?
There are. I mean, the basics, the fundamentals of play-by-play don't change a whole lot. There are just little things I learned, and you got to. TV has been what I've done since 2012 with radio. My heart, and Harlan said this even better than I. Any play-by-play is hardest with radio. I mean, play-by-play and radio go hand in hand. TV's more of an analyst game to a certain degree. But the one thing I've learned is in any of these broadcasts, you have to be yourself. You have to, I have a sense of humor. At least I don't know how funny I am, but I at least try every once in a while. So I try to bring that into a broadcast. I was told in this, if you're not having fun doing this, then how can you expect the audience to have fun? That's something that carries over between radio and TV. If you're not enjoying yourself, if you're not enthusiastic about this, how can anybody else be enthusiastic about what's going on? TV side, I lay out a little bit more, or at least I try to. That's something I'm continuing to learn about, is allowing the crowd to tell the story, allowing the pictures to tell the story. You can certainly more on TV than you can in radio, although it's a potent video in certain circumstances. But if you lay out too long in radio, your audience is wondering what's happening, and if their radio has gone out, or if your microphone has gone out, so you have to be careful with that. As far as the marriage, though, I mean, it's a different skill set. There is a certain amount of adjustment that I make in my call from radio to TV. I talk a lot more in radio, obviously. TV side is more of a setup. I'll call the play. I'll try to hit the home run when I need to, but a lot of it is make sure that my partner gets to where he wants to go or she wants to go with whatever we're doing from an analyst standpoint. And I try to get them there in an expeditious fashion so that they don't get mad at me for talking too much.
Kevin, I will confirm you are funny.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate it. I see 2 or 3 of you on the chat saying I'm funny, and the rest of you are ignoring it. So I appreciate that too. Thank you.
You're welcome. Kevin, thank you so very much for being here. It's been a pleasure to host you here. The insight's been fabulous. We're all grateful. So thank you again.
No. This has been really cool, and kudos to you, John, for putting this thing together. It was the highlight of my day, that's for sure, because as you know, we don't have a whole lot going on. So good luck to everybody else. Thanks so much.
Yep, you're welcome, Kevin. Thanks, man.